The Cinematic Church of Horror is a cathartic and challenging sanctum for its congregation. In this timeless chamber, the wind of cultural history whispers through stone walls, decorated with the iconography of symbolic and supernatural power. This is a spiritual screen chosen by an audience who willingly seek confrontation with death, supernatural forces, and the primal fear of the unknown. House of Leaves Publishing presents a collection of writings exploring the cultural history of religion in horror cinema. Scared Sacred: Idolatry, Religion, and Worship in the Horror Film is edited by Rebecca Booth, author of The Devil Rides Out, part of the Devil's Advocate series from Mature Publishing. Aaron Thompson, owner and editor of the Backseat Driver Reviews, and R.F. Todd, managing director of House of Leaves. The book developed in response to the recent reclaiming of the fusion between supernatural and religious themes in mainstream horror cinema, and brings together leading critics, historians, and writers in the horror community to tackle this theological topography. In addition to an introduction by author and theologian Professor Douglas E. Cohen, the book also features a foreword from actor and author Doug Bradley, who brought to life perhaps the most iconic figure in religious horror cinema. Thematically, the book is divided into 4 sections to provide a well-rounded analysis of world religion, idolatry, and worship, covering a diverse range of subjects, from atheism to auditory hallucination, martyrdom to medieval witch, and zealotry to zolatry. The outpouring of support and interest in Scared Sacred has been heartwarming, and we hope you enjoy the book. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We couldn't have picked better company.
Welcome back to the United Nations of Horror. I'm Lucard Dragomir, and today I'm joined by not one, but 2 authors. First, our very own Mark Kane. Mark, how have you been, sir?
Very well, thank you very much. Looking forward to this particular episode. This one's been a long time coming in. I've put in a lot of work on this one. Telling you all about it when we get into it.
Definitely. And I am also joined by author Rick Powell. Rick, I'm sure that listeners will remember hearing you from our first Vampire in Literature series. How have you been since then?
Oh, I've been doing pretty good. Just working a lot and trying to get a lot of things done, and just trying to write when I can, but I got a lot of things in the fire, so everything's going really well. Thank you.
Hey, we're glad to have you. Can you tell us about your latest releases?
Last year I put out my novella, Teacher, and I had a short story I just put out this year called Herald. I have a few things in the works right now. I'm going to have a short story in anthology called Lustcraftian Horrors. It's going to be a Lovecraft-inspired erotic horror anthology that I'm really excited about.
I need to read that.
That sounds right up my alley as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to have a short story in an anthology dedicated to Jennifer Miller. She used to be the spearhead for the Ladies and Gentlemen of Horror anthology, where all the money went to cancer research. And unfortunately, she passed away this year, and all the authors and everybody's getting together doing an anthology just for her and her son. And that's going to be coming out very soon. So, I'm looking forward to that. And other than that, I've been working on, believe it or not, my first children's book. I'm going to be getting together with a children's book with a artist, getting that out hopefully next year. And I've been plugging away at my first novel, which going on 2 years now I've been working on. So I'm plugging on that. So a lot in the fire. So
No,
that sounds
awesome.
very cool. You're coming into the same sort of spaces that I have written in, children's stuff. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very excited about that.
So as you listeners may have guessed, Rick has joined us for part 3 Vampire in Literature series. And this time we will be talking about my personal favorite character in all of horror, and that would be Dracula.
You're him, aren't you?
Why, whatever do you mean?
You're Dracula.
No, I'm Milli Vanilli. Of course I'm Dracula. And you know what? I enjoy being me.
The big dog in the room when it comes to vampire stories, of course.
Yeah.
By far, there's no one even close, really. It's Dracula.
No, there's really not. We're going to start with the novel here and just get right into it. But before we do, let me ask you, Rick, when did you first read Dracula?
Believe it or not, the first time I really read the novel was probably about 5-6 years ago. As a child in Chicago on Creature Features, I was always first introduced to Dracula through Bela Lugosi through Universal Monsters, and 10:30 at night watching that on television and all the other movies and the comics. And I just broke down and really dug into the novel about 5 years ago, really getting into it. And that writing style just blew me away. So, but basically, it was through Universal Monsters, Bela Lugosi, and I remember seeing Dwight Fry as Renfield. That stick on my mind right there as a child, seeing that at nighttime, and the ship Demeter just floating around the sea. The Gothic setting of that movie, the Universal one, is just a staple for everything, and that was really my first introduction to the movie and the novel a few years ago.
In Chicago, you guys have horror hosts like Spinguli, which I think he's still going, right?
He's going strong. 40 years and running right now.
40 years. That's wild. Mark, same question for you. When did you first come to read Dracula?
Well, I came to know about Dracula in the same way as Rick, Universal and Hammer, really. Right. Hammer was on British TV quite a lot when I was growing up. So I think my first colour Dracula movie was Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. I distinctly remember it, and it's quite a shocker if you're not expecting what happened, because that film was when Hammer was going more graphic, so it's like that was my sort of colour introduction to Dracula, but I knew him from the Ghost as well. But when I first read the novel when I was about 11, so I'm going to show my age here now, so approximately 45 years ago.
That's awesome.
No, I'm not that old. 40 plus years ago. 40 plus years ago. And I've reread it several times. I must have read it at least 10 times, at least.
Oh wow!
It's a great book. I think it's underrated in terms of it being a literary piece. Actually, it's usually lumped in with pulp, and I think it borders between pulp and literature. Personally,
I could see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard a lot of, I guess, historians say that, it was sort of a trashy 18th century novel, if you will. And I guess I just don't get the trashiness of it that much. But
yeah,
again,
it depends who you compare it with. I mean, some writers at the time, contemporary to Stoker, were lumped in the same. Dickens is probably lumped in the same camp as Stoker, whereas someone like Thomas Hardy and so on, are seen as a sort of slightly elevated film, and I could kind of see why. But it's still some lovely writing in this book. Very evocative.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll never be, I won't claim to be like the most well versed in all of literature, but, just from things I have read from around this time period, I've just always really loved Stoker's writing style, and even the way it's presented as sort of like diary entries, I just find to be really fascinating. So you're reading through all these diary entries as you go through, and it gives you a very kind of unique perspective that I don't think a lot of books have done, and I don't know about from that time period.
Yeah, just to put this into a perspective in terms of sort of the non-literary Dracula, I had read this, I think, a year before the BBC production with Louis Jourdan. So I was able, when I watched it, I was able to say, oh yeah, this is quite, this bit's faithful and this bit, because I was so used to nothing being like the book, nothing.
Right.
It was kind of refreshing to see one that was actually like the book. So I know that I read it before that was on, and that was on in 1977, and I would have been 11 in 1976, you see. So that's how I can place it reasonably accurately.
Yeah, I have always compared, it's kind of going to be kind of weird to say, but I compared the novel Dracula to the 2014 Gareth Edwards Godzilla. The reason is, it's kind of weird, but the reason is, reading that novel, somebody said that in the whole 2.5 hours of the Godzilla movie, you see Godzilla like for 14 minutes. And it's the same as in the novel Dracula. The epistolary writing of that novel, you really didn't see Dracula or vision Dracula that much, but the legend and the history and the ripples he leaves in everybody's lives, especially with the part on reading the novel, the part on the ship, the Demeter, where you really don't see Dracula, but all the sailors know something's there, and it's terrifying. And
Yes.
That's just the mystery that makes it more horrifying of his presence, So yeah.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I had never compared Dracula and Godzilla, but
I don't know why that stuck in my mind, but I was rereading the novel again, getting prepared for the podcast, and that just stuck in my mind. I was thinking, why is it? And I think, yeah, I could see the comparisons. It's really weird. I mean, it's almost 100, 200 years apart, but I mean, just basically they are both horror icons, Godzilla and Dracula, even though they're totally different monsters.
yeah, hey, and I don't think there has been a Dracula versus Godzilla yet. We should make this happen. I'll be in touch with Toho Studios tomorrow.
Good.
Well, getting into a bit of the history of Dracula, between 1879 and 1898, Stoker was a business manager for the Lyceum Theatre in London. And Mark, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You are?
Oh,
Yes.
all right. We're on a good track here. He supplemented his income by writing many sensational novels, his most successful being The Vampire Tale of Dracula, and that was published on the 26th of May, 1897. Now, parts of the novel are set around the town of Whitby, where he apparently spent his summer holidays. And Mark, I was wondering if you've ever been to Whitby.
I've been to Whitby a few times. I really love Whitby. In fact, I have the idea that I may retire to Whitby because it's a lovely place. It's got a certain quiet quality to it, even though it's kind of touristy now. And when you go there, there's lots of goths walking around doing Dracula trails.
It is on my list, yeah.
And it's fun. But it's a really lovely place. And I know that one of the parent podcasts, well, the main parent podcast of UNH, which is Horror Etc., and the DP Man loves Whitby too. He talks about it a lot. So it's kind of a nice connection there with our parent podcast. But yeah, Whitby is a really nice place, and there is a cliff with a graveyard overlooking a sandy beach, and you can just picture the ship, the Demeter, washed up on it. You can picture it when you're standing there. It's amazing.
That sounds beautiful.
I get that kind of image of the Frank Langella film, with the ship washed up on the shore. I don't know if that was actually filmed in Whitby or not, but
it does look like Whitby.
Yeah,
Whitby looks like that. I'm not saying it was filmed there, but Whitby looks very much like how that's set in.
Oh, okay, so that's really cool to me. Just thinking, that's how I always envision it. So
it's like a graveyard and either a disused or a rather old, quaint church on the top of the cliff overlooking. So you can sit in the graveyard and look at the beach. It's quite an unusual and serene place.
Ah, man, I hope to see that place one day. It's definitely on my Dracula tour trip.
Lot of hills in Whitby, though. Lots of walking up and down.
Ah, gotcha. Well, good exercise there. Now, I have in my notes here that Victorian readers, they kind of enjoyed Dracula. They thought, it's a good adventure story, but it didn't really reach legendary status until, the 20th century. I guess the Universal release came to be. We're going to talk about Nosferatu later, but I think the Universal film, as we mentioned, with Bela Lugosi is really the kind of the catalyst. It really is what brought many people to read the Dracula novel.
And also the touring stage production before the film with Bela Lugosi to it. But apparently it was electric. You know, he was quite amazing on stage. And I can believe that.
I can as well. Stoker, he wanted his boss to actually play Dracula, supposedly anyway, Sir Henry Irving. If the character of Dracula was in fact based on his boss, that must have been a tough guy to work for.
Yeah, Henry Irving was one of these, you know, big actors, famously, you know, it wasn't so much, he liked a bit of, chewing the scenery, that kind of thing. He was a big, brash man, I understand, and he bossed Stoker around quite a bit. And I this could be wrong, but I think I remember reading something about, you know, when Stoker asked him about playing it, it was like, I'm not playing that trash. I do Shakespeare, and, you know, it was all that.
Man.
Yeah, big shouty actor type.
Yeah.
Sounds like Orson Welles almost.
Yeah.
I have a vision of him, yeah.
Yeah, I also think he based it a bit on Byron, Lord Byron as well.
How do you feel Dracula holds up for a modern-day audience?
I think it holds up very well. I think certainly the first half is a real page-turner. Really is a page-turner. And written in such a way as you do get the distinct voices. Sometimes when you read these I have trouble with this word, epistolary works, it feels a bit too much like it's in the same voice where it's different characters, but Stoker successfully translates, you know, Mina and Harker and Van Helsing's journals very well, and you kind of don't feel it's just someone telling you the story with the same voice for each of them. And it's augmented very nicely in several audiobook versions as well, you know, when you get different actors doing those bits of the thing, it really works well. I think it's a little weaker in the second half, where it's basically figuring out where Dracula is across Europe. Though I still quite like it. It could be a bit punchier, is my feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I like the writing because you could read each and every character's distinct personalities in each of the correspondence. So he pulled that off. He blew that out of the park, Stoker.
Yeah,
when he did that.
Van Helsing in particular is unbelievably distinctive voice and really well written, and you can really imagine him being a real person the way he talks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what always blows me away, is the fact that all these characters, he really does manage to write them so differently, as you say, Mark, and that's wild to me, because even when I write, and, you know, I'm not claiming to be a great writer like either of you guys, but, you know, I find it very difficult to make my characters sound different, you know, to have that different voice. Is there any technique, and this is just getting a little off topic, but from a writing standpoint, is there any trick that you use, Rick, when you're trying to differentiate characters?
I basically try to imagine myself in the character's shoes when I do that, especially I got the idea to write my short story, The Grove, through the epistolary writing, that basically the same way Stoker did with Dracula, through a series of correspondence. And it was fun, and basically you almost psychologically turn yourself into that character as they're writing that correspondence, that letter or, you know, that email or whatever, how it was in my story. And it's basically just switch on a different personality when you do that. It's I don't know, it comes natural for me, maybe because I have multiple personalities, who knows? But, you know, it's just, it was fun to do, and it's challenging to write that way.
Yeah, it's also, you can also base a character on someone you know, or an actor, or a certain character from a movie. Like, oh, this character here is just like, I don't know, John Wayne's character in The Searchers, or James Cagney's character in White Heat. You know what I mean? That helps you distinguish them. That's another way of doing it.
Historians kind of seem to debate this. Rick, I'll start with you. Do you think that Bram Stoker had knowledge of the true real-life Vlad the Impaler?
There's a lot of theories, as I was doing some research, that he did and he didn't, but I think he did in a sense, but mostly he got all of his inspiration from like the previous vampire stories in the past, which was Carmilla and Polidori's the vampire. I think that basically sparked the fire under him where he did a little bit for Vlad the Impaler, the history, and he dug into that.
There is definitely a speech where Dracula talks about fighting back the Turks and the hordes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To give him a sort of military, but it's only 2 paragraphs in the whole thing. So I think it's salt and pepper. He read about it and he's just using a bit of salt and pepper. He wasn't wanting to suggest necessarily this Dracula is Vlad the Impaler, but he had some knowledge of Vlad the Impaler, so he was cherry picking, as all writers do, right? It's just a note. All creative people, they take their influences, or it can be just a phrase. There's an interesting character. Let's kind of mold it around him. I think there's a bit of that.
How has Dracula influenced your work in particular, Rick?
Yeah, that short story, The Grove, is the epistolary writing, like I said, and basically when I wrote a short story called True Nature, it was a werewolf story. Believe it or not, I had Dracula in mind. Believe it or not, basically for the viciousness, the sexual intensity of the animal part of the human psyche. That's why I took it from Dracula, was a part of that, believe it or not. So that's a lot of that bleeds into my writing sometimes. Basically, of course, I write a good amount of erotic horror fiction, so you could see where Dracula is a main staple for that. He's absolutely iconic for that. Yeah,
he's the iconic dark, tall stranger. Dangerous.
Yeah,
of that kind of ilk.
Women love him, and men want to be him. Essentially, that's when you have a really good character. I feel like in many ways. Are there any particular chapters or passages that you consider to be a favorite, Mark?
You put me on the spot here. I really like all the Seward and Renfield stuff quite a bit. I think they're really interesting, and also Harker's account of when he was in the castle. I think those are the most electric bits, and I like pretty much everything Van Helsing does as well. So there's lots of bits I really like. One particular piece, if I had to pick one as the best bit, it's probably Harker's accounts in the castle. Which are kind of erotically charged, aren't they? In many respects.
Yeah.
I think those are the most intense ones, in my opinion. And the bits I like the best.
Rick, how about for you?
Believe it or not, it'd be the part with Lucy when she turned into the vampire, and the children's accounts of running into her around the moors, where they say she's the boofer lady that was, feeding on the children and stuff. Basically her transformation from how she was such a, flirtatious. I mean, she had like 3 suitors that wanted to marry her, and then she meets Dracula, gets turned into a vampire, and then she starts hunting these children, these children along the moors and stuff. That sticks with me. And believe it or not, that was kind of one that what's really stuck with me is in Mina Harker's diary, when she was interviewing Renfield, her and Dr. Seward, that made me think of Silence of the Lambs, where they're talking to Renfield.
I can say that, yeah.
Renfield is, he's not mentioned too much, but he's a big part of that whole novel, so.
The bit with the sailors is also pretty great as well, as you've already mentioned that. The bit with the whole account of the sailors and being suspicious and what they want to do and stuff like that.
Yeah, one thing I read about when Stoker was doing research for this, he had a great interest on sailors that died during natural disasters, nautical ways. So he did a lot of research for basically that part in the novel.
Yeah, there's no doubt Stoker was a really smart man. He was actually Irish. And I don't know, I was going to ask you this, Mark, did being Irish in that point in time in England have any bearing on how, a person might have been viewed compared to, say, like, America during the 1800s where, Irish people and, just people in general were often not treated the best. But for whatever reason, here in America, the Irish people often had it very, very rough.
It's tricky this because, we're talking about something long ago and I can't really be sure, But my feeling is somewhere like London is much more accommodating than if you turned up, in a small village or something like that. However, there was still problems. London's always had this massive waves of immigration over and over again, and kind of just absorbs it, and it's fine. But there's always that initial tension with a wave, where it's like, they've got to integrate, or, so we've got to figure out how we're going to live together and stuff like that, and there's been race riots and stuff like that. But, it used to be famously, there were signs on certain sort of boarding houses, is like, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, that it was that kind of thing. So Irish was, not considered particularly high tier. But the fact he was a manager of a theatre kind of shows, again, the sort of cosmopolitan nature of the city at that time was probably, it didn't really matter.
Yeah, that's why I was curious about it, because I was like, well, he was, obviously seemed like he was doing well and, was a well-educated man. But it's something I've always been just curious about as far as Stoker goes.
It's interesting because when this is a bit of a personal anecdote, but I remember when I was growing up, if I went to relatives elsewhere in the country, Irish was considered kind of a second-class thing. However, where I lived, it was just same as everyone else. And London, I think that's a London thing. No one. I mean, we had. I don't want to get into it too much, but we had like bombings caused by sort of the IRA, but that didn't make us think any different of anyone Irish. It was just not. It wasn't a thing. There was just no association of that kind, really, certainly in my mind, but in everyone I encountered mind, it just wasn't a thing. But yeah, there probably was, to answer your question. But in London, less so, I would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably true somewhat in America as well, as time has gone on. Obviously, history in England as a whole, a lot longer than in America. So I feel like in some ways we sort of drag behind a little bit, if you will. I don't know. Yeah,
maybe.
But
America's a big old melting pot, but so's England as all. England in particular has always been that as well.
Right.
It's just that's the way it is. It's interesting though when you talk about that Dracula is some of the subtext is the foreign other, isn't it?
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
one of its major subtexts as well.
Yeah, and I do think maybe. I've wondered in the past, did Stoker maybe take experiences from maybe even when he was a child or something like that and put that into the novel? I mean, we really have no way to know, right? But but it's fascinating.
It's hard to say I mean, Renfield feels so fully fleshed. You got to think he must have known someone like that or had experience of that. It just feels such a weird thing to pull out the air, It could, but the whole Renfield stuff could be excised completely and the story would still work, wouldn't it, really? But it just sits there and it works perfectly, but it doesn't have to be there.
Bram Stoker, obviously, his contribution to horror is pretty big. But where do you think it kind of, I guess, ranks his overall contribution to horror films and movies as a whole? And the reason I ask this is just because, in many respects, it's kind of a shame that Dracula was his only kind of huge, I guess, success. And it happened pretty much after his death, which is also kind of tragic. But Rick, where does Dracula and Bram Stoker, where does it kind of rank for you as far as horror films as a whole?
Oh boy, it's ranking right up there like my top four, basically, when it comes to Dracula, because he is, of all the monsters around, he is the one that could go both ways, where he could either be sexually appealing, or he could be, how could I put it? Or he could be, grotesque. I mean, he could be both versions, and whenever you see it on screen, in theater, or read it in books, he could be portrayed both ways. Like you said before, he is the monster that the men want to be and the women want to give themselves to. So it's kind of like, he has that sensual aura that no other monsters have, like, Wolfman, Frankenstein, any of the ghost genre or anything else like that. It's something that's it could be a mystery, and it's something that a lot of people just have within themselves that sometimes they see themselves as. So he's basically has that devilish good looks, and he has that he's the part of us that we want to be and want to aspire to. Kind of weird to say, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely
He's kind of like the horror version of James Bond in many ways, isn't it? James
There you
Bond
go.
has got the same
really
vibe. He's just more. Well, anyway, let's not talk about James Bond. I often feel that James Bond's traits are a Dracula-ish, and I think I mean the cinematic Dracula rather than because in the book he's a bit more of a blank slate, and all of this other stuff you've mentioned is kind of transferred onto him through the movies and other media, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Whereas the book is a blank slate. But that's one of the wonders of the book. It's kind of because he's in it so little, we can transfer a lot onto it. It's a bit like A Quiet Man. You can transfer all sorts of, a religious leader who's quiet, you can transfer all sorts of sort of your feelings onto. Whereas if they talk a lot, you kind of know what they're about, and you can't transfer so much or sympathise or whatever,
Absolutely. Well, one final question before we move on to talking about some of the Dracula films. If Stoker were alive today and he saw Dracula, what do you think he would say?
I think he'd be kind of blown away. Plus, I think with 1897 mentality, he would probably be basically a little bit appalled by all the different versions of how he in the novel he basically had Dracula as a monster, an evil being, and now we see comedic versions, Love at First Bite, or children's serials. I mean, Count Chocula, he'd probably be, what the hell is this? But it became an icon, and it's larger than life. He'd probably be blown away and discuss it at the same time. Kind of weird to say, but yeah.
I think he would be nonplussed, probably speechless. Because this would be so far out of his realm of experience to understand the cultural influence of something like this, and all the different medias he doesn't know about too. I imagine you'd be nonplussed. But I mean, it's a great legacy. I mean, there is that. We can say, it's a shame he only had one great work, but man, if you're going to have one great work, Dracula is the one to have, isn't it, really? He's one of these few characters that can be reinvented, a bit like James Bond did, be reinvented, reworked, redone. There's very few characters in modern literature or, past literature where that works. I think there's Dracula, Sherlock Holmes, Batman, James Bond. I can't think of any others.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there.
Yeah, you're right on the head right there.
About, the wall, if you're talking horror, the Wolfman and possibly Frankenstein, the Doctor. But they're lesser compared to Dracula's versions are rich and varied, as we'll get into when we talk about the films and stuff.
Absolutely. While Dracula was a famous novel, the king of all vampires would become even more popular when he hit the silver screen. So we'll be right back. We're going to sink our fangs right into the Dracula films here. I think that perhaps no one knows the Count in cinema more than you, Mark Kane.
Well, I'm sure that's a bold claim. I know a lot. I've seen it all.
Man, you have managed to watch just an astonishing amount of Dracula on both the big screen and the small screen as well. I mean, I've just been amazed, I should say, leading up to this. You've been like a machine consuming Dracula.
I have. I've been doing 5 or 6 a week for a few months to try and get everything. And everything I'm going to discuss, I watched apart from one film, which is Blackula, but only because I've seen Blackula so many times, I didn't feel the need to watch it again. And it's kind of peripheral. There is some interesting stuff to say about Blackula, though, in terms of the Dracula legend and the current, state of Dracula.
Yeah, and we should note too, we have covered Blackula 1 and 2 in pretty good detail on a previous show too. So, I feel like a lot of these movies could just be their own show, but we're gonna kind of rapid fire through and as best we can anyway, and then at some point we may come back in future shows.
Yeah, I mean, it's they break down easily, don't they? Apart from Nosferatu, it's like Universal Dracula, Hammer Dracula, and everything else Dracula. That's kind of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's
right
how
on
it
the
kind
money
of
there.
fills out. Yeah, so Nosferatu's the beginning point, and shockingly good film. Still stands up.
1921.
Yeah, and luckily not lost forever because they didn't get permission to do this, and they basically ripped off Dracula completely, called him Count Orlok.
Yeah.
Though in more recent print, he's just called Dracula, isn't he? In line as well. But you see the name Orlok crop up now and again as well. Still, and Nosferatu, well, we have covered Nosferatu, right? We must have.
I know we've talked about it a little bit. I mean, at some point, I think we should. Well, I think you guys covered it when you did the silent German films back a long time ago.
That's the one. Yes, we did. Yeah. I mean, this is Dracula as monstrous completely, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the way I really like Dracula, especially in kind of modern day where sometimes you get these sparkly vampires. This Count Dracula is nothing like that. He is just he's more rat-like than anything else.
Indeed.
And that makeup, my God, that's still shocking even now.
It is a shocker. It's they were already introducing tropes that went on to persist through vampire lore that weren't necessarily there in the novel. Sunlight. He gets killed by sunlight in Nosferatu.
Yeah, and
that's not there in the book.
No.
He loses his powers, but he does not die in sunlight.
Exactly, and it's funny because that would become like canon almost for so many Dracula films, where he couldn't go out in the sunlight, and obviously people had probably just seen Nosferatu and not read the novel.
Yeah, indeed. And then we get onto the Universals, right? So, I mean, the big dog here is Bela Lugosi as Dracula in the 31 version. There's also a Spanish version, which I did watch. It wasn't easy to come by, but I did. In fact, I got a Dracula box set, but I found that anywhere else I found it, like on YouTube, didn't have subtitles. But luckily, the version I had did, so I did watch the Spanish version, so I can talk about that.
Yeah, I like both versions, actually. I do think Lugosi plays a better Dracula, but, I think that there's more, kind of nifty special effects going on in the Spanish version. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, the special effects and the acting's better. I mean, the non-Dracula acting. The only decent actors in Dracula in the Bela Lugosi one is Bela Lugosi and Dwight Frye, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Everyone else is pretty awful. So that kind of drags you down. I always say if the rest of Dracula were like the first act, it will be a total classic. Because the third act is so good, but then it just falls to pieces when it gets to a drawing room.
It really does.
Trying to catch Dracula out stuff. And again, we have the mirror thing, but that is in the book, isn't it? He detests mirrors, but because it doesn't cast a reflection, so that does come from the book. So there's a few interesting, and we get this tall, dark stranger, handsome stranger, rather than a decrepit old man who gets younger. So that's got a different vibe, right? Yeah, the Spanish one's okay, but it's got about half an hour longer or something. A lot of Renfield having comedy stuff with one of his guards, and I kind of like it, but I prefer the Bela Lugosi one.
Yeah, I do think the Lugosi film is overall superior because it does have Lugosi, but I don't know. There are just certain it's so interesting to see almost like these different views of the same sets. Because they both use the same sets and everything. So, that part of it is pretty cool. And then, when Dracula opens his coffin, you have the, kind of the smoke coming out. And so just some neat little stuff they did. I feel like if you love the original 1931, Dracula, you're gonna kind of just want to see the Spanish version just because,
It's definitely worth seeing. Yeah, definitely.
They kind of complement each other in a weird way. Rick, have you seen the Spanish version?
I've seen bits and pieces of it, believe it or not. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I like the foreign atmosphere of it. It basically gave it a little bit more, I like to say class and not as so much showmanship as Universal did. From what I've seen, they basically gave it a little bit more international feel to that. And like I said, you could see that they were really throwing themselves into the roles from what I've seen of it, that they really wanted to try to say, hey, Universal, we could upstage you. Of course, these came out basically both at the same time, from what I believe, when that Spanish one aired. So, they had a lot going for it, and I got to really dig into it.
The Bela Lugosi one, once he's left the castle and is in England, it's kind of gets really dull. Whereas in this Spanish one, there's still some good stuff happening.
Yeah.
In between the comedy guard Renfield stuff, there's a bit where a maid faints and Renfield starts creeping towards her, and you think, oh man, this is bad, and I think he just swats a fly off of her or something like that. He doesn't harm her at all. So it's like, oh wow, that was really good. That was a really good little scene.
Yeah.
And worth digging out just to see for yourself. But there's some other nice little touches in the Spanish one that just not there in the Universal one.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we've talked about this before, but the Von Helsing and the original Universal, just so bad. I mean...
Yeah, bad.
Man.
Edward Van Sloan cannot act at all.
Yeah, he's terrible. Well, moving on, Dracula's Daughter from 1936.
It was an interesting film, this. It kind of reminds me more of a Val Lewton film than anything. It's because it's about this woman trying to resist the thing, and then basically it's a codified kind of lesbian message in there. Certainly that's how it's interpreted by the LGBT community, which I think is really interesting. She's got quite striking features. She's going, oh, I can't tell people my secret, and this guy's going, you need to tell the secret. And there's some interesting stuff going on. Again, we get Van Sloan back as Van Helsing, and we get some comedy police stuff, I think. So it's an interesting one. It's not a great film, but it's decent.
Greetings from London, and welcome to this special showing of classic monster movies here on the Sci-Fi Channel. I'm Christopher Lee, and tonight I'll introduce you to Dracula's Daughter. Universal commissioned several versions of the story. One, by screenwriter John Balderston, portrayed Dracula's daughter as a dominatrix driven to torture men with whips and chains. Universal thanked Mr. Balderston and kept looking. The final version is voluptuous indeed, but in a very different way. You'll see what I mean as the magnetic Gloria Holden portrays Dracula's daughter. The offspring of the great Dracula is played by Gloria Holden, chosen for her dark features reminiscent of Bela Lugosi's. But don't look for Lugosi in this film. The flashback to Dracula features a wax dummy that looks less like Lugosi than Gloria Holden does. Lugosi was signed to do this movie, but was mysteriously paid off, his services unused. Even so, rabid vampire fans will find plenty to enjoy as the Sci-Fi Channel continues this special showing of Dracula's Daughter. Notice the unusual decor of Countess Sekei's home. It has no mirrors. Of course, vampires show no reflection in mirrors, so Dracula's daughter would avoid anything that might reveal her secret. In 1936, Hollywood censors were more worried by the reflection of lesbianism. The Hayes office closely supervised the magical attraction between the Countess and the innocent Lily. They also removed a scene depicting the Countess feeding a live baby as a late-night snack to Dracula's vampire wives, a scene deemed too horrifying even for Dracula's daughter. Classic Monster Month on the Sci-Fi Channel will continue with Dracula's Daughter in just a moment. Here on the Sci-Fi Channel. The Universal picture, Dracula's Daughter, was originally inspired by Bram Stoker's story, Dracula's Guest. But it was MGM's David O. Selznick who purchased the rights from Stoker's widow, Frances. MGM developed the project in secret using the code name Tarantula. Fearing a legal battle, MGM sold their treatment to Universal, which completely changed the story without asking further permission from the Stoker estate. You see, by then it was discovered that in America, Dracula was in the public domain. Stoker had neglected to file 2 copies of his novel with the Copyright Office, thus failing to stake a proper claim. Now, back to Dracula's Daughter here on the Sci-Fi Channel. Daughter here on the Sci-Fi Channel. And so ends the story of Dracula's Daughter. Years later, when I played the Count, I always drew blood in Technicolor. In these early Universal films, the camera discreetly pans or cuts away before the fatal moment. That leaves the details to the viewer's imagination, lending these films a certain Victorian charm. I'm Christopher Lee, and I hope you'll join me again tomorrow here on the Sci-Fi Channel for another classic monster movie, Son of Dracula.
House of Frankenstein. This is a favorite of mine from back in the day. I saw this when I was really young.
Yeah, I like this one. I always get House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula mixed up. But if I remember rightly, House of Frankenstein is the one where Dracula's doing something for Boris. Basically, he's a minion of Boris Karloff until he gets exposed to the sun in about the first 15 minutes or something like that. Is that right? Is that this one?
I think so.
Have I got that right? Yeah. So it basically, Karloff's on a revenge spree, isn't he? He's a mad scientist who wants to get revenge on people that put him away, and he wants to carry on his work. And he takes over a House of Horrors show. He basically kills people, and he's got a little hunchback minion. He kind of realizes that he pulls out the stake of, he doesn't believe it's Dracula, does he? So he pulls out the stake, and Dracula appears, and he kind of threatens Dracula and then says, I'll look after you during that. They do a deal. And then we get like Gypsy Girl plots and all that, but Dracula's long gone well before any of this. He does a bit of dirty work for Boris Karloff, then his carriage gets pushed off the road and the sun comes up.
Yeah.
And it's John, and they did bring Bela Lugosi back.
That's what blows me away about this. Yeah.
John Carradine. But he's fine, but he's not Bela Lugosi,
That's
right?
my thing. I don't mind John Carradine as Dracula, but he's no Bela Lugosi.
I'm going to repay you for betraying me. I'm going to give that brain of yours a new home in the skull of the Frankenstein monster. The jugular vein is severed, not cut, but torn apart as though by powerful teeth.
A werewolf. Last night I killed a man.
You didn't know what you were doing.
But I did. I wanted to kill.
I think they're after Dracula.
I do like this one. This one's fun. Again, a scientist trying to help Dracula. Dracula wants to be cured. We didn't even mention Wolfman and Frank the Monster was in the other one, and they're also in this. Yeah. There's a bit more Lawrence Talbot getting cured kind of stuff. Dracula wants to get better, but then he turns the tables and gives his blood to the doctor, who turns into a nutcase. And we got that great actor, and I can't remember his name, really creepy looking actor, as one of the, the torch-bearing mob. Oh, I'm going to have to, I know it when I see it, but he's a really creepy looking dude, but he's kind of, it goes on about his brother being killed. My brother's being killed. It's his fault.
I was wondering who that was when I was watching. I was like, oh man, he's really like distinct, you know?
Yeah, no, he's talked about a lot. If anyone ever listens to the Gilbert Godfrey podcast, he's always going on about the old monster shows. He's one of those guys that Gilbert Godfrey really loves, and I can't find his name. Oh, this is so annoying. It's not in the list.
It's okay. We'll just tell people, hey, Wikipedia, you know?
Yeah, I might have it. You know what? I just realised I'm looking at House of Frankenstein. I meant the House of Dracula. I'm like, that's why I can't find his name. But it's a great sounding name. It's got like a real zing to the name. Sorry, I'm really holding this thing up.
Oh, no, it's cool. Rick, what did you think of, I don't think I asked you about House of Frankenstein or House of Dracula. Any thoughts on either of these two?
Those are both, they're paired together perfectly, but I could tell in House of Dracula, when I remember seeing it, you could tell they all had fun making it because they realized they came off the coattails of House of Frankenstein. They say, hey, let's go all out with some of this stuff. And you could just tell the way the acting was and the way the characters were doing it, that they were thinking, hey, we got something here. Let's just pull out the punches. And they threw some scenes in there and some acting in there. That was really cool. So it's like, it flowed together pretty well compared to the first one. So yeah,
it's got a lot of energy, hasn't it?
It has a lot of they have a lot of dynamics going on with the characters. So that was really cool. Yeah.
Sorry, that actor's name was Skelton Nags. Skelton Nags.
Oh man, what a great name!
Nags with a K. He's a British actor, which I did not know. He's from Sheffield in Britain, which a lot of Universal did use a lot of British actors, didn't they? Certainly when James Whale was involved in some of their stuff. But Skelton Nags, he's a creepy dude in loads of films.
And then we come to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and here we finally get Bela Lugosi back as Dracula. And I believe,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Only 2 performances as Dracula, though there's some where he's kind of Dracula, isn't he? But he's not really. Love this film. There's not really much to say about this. Is one of the great films.
And really, it wasn't made too long after, I don't have a date, but not, I think like 6 years after the original Dracula.
No, it was 1946. This is off the top of my head. I think it's 1946. So it was like 15 years it took to go from like serious Dracula to comedy Dracula, with some, a bit of comedy along the way anyway. Good turn from Lugosi. Apparently he got a bit more, upset on the set because the guys would clown around and he's a serious actor. So it was like, come on, we got to work. But I think he relaxed towards the end of it and enjoyed it a bit more.
This is how I came to know Abbott and Costello. Honestly, I wouldn't know about those two unless, I'd seen this film. So
yeah, I'd say this is their best film as well.
This was the first Abbott and Costello film I ever saw, and this basically, started my short love with the duo there. So, but this one sticks in my brain as watching the little candle flow along the coffin top as it's opening, and that was a hilarious scene, and this one's a good introduction to the two. So
it's just golden, isn't it?
Some of the lines about the Wolfman are just amazing. I'll turn into a wolf, you and 20 million other guys. Some brilliant lines.
Yeah, they don't make them like that anymore. That's for sure.
So the Dracula in this is, he's a bit Machiavellian, but there's a woman involved who's also Machiavellian. He wants the creature's brain he wants a dumb servant to protect him. That's what it's all about. So here we get a Dracula who's quite far removed from the literary Dracula. Who's plotting. He wants this creature to do this stuff, which does come up in a few other films, that kind of thinking. So this was kind of influential in that respect as well.
Yeah, I think they made the Dracula in this one a little bit more vulnerable, especially when he was looking for a creature to protect him, because, of course, when you go back to the first Dracula in Universal, he was the shit. It's like, I don't need nobody to protect me. I'm it. So, yeah. So I can see it gave him a little bit of humanization in this one.
Yeah, it's one of these things. The more he talked, the less he's mysterious, right? It's one of those. And he just came across as like another bad guy rather than Dracula.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so true. Yeah. But nonetheless, just a film that I would definitely encourage everyone to go out and see. If you love the classic horror movies, you'll love this one. And moving on, we have Return of Dracula from 1958. And Mark, I'm not sure if I've seen this one or not. So
there's not much to say. Yeah, there's not much to say really. It's like a cheap little American independent movie. Essentially, Middle America. They have a cousin come visit who turns out to be Dracula because Dracula's killed The real cousin, and is, a teenage girl that really likes cousin Janosch or whatever his name is. I can't really remember. And a stroppy boyfriend who's like, "Oh, you're always going on about him," and and the plot goes on from there. Really, people are disappearing. What's going on? Not a great Dracula film. Not a great Dracula either. Really quite throwaway. Just mention it for completion's sake. That's it. That's why it's here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry,
Plus, Francis Lederer, that played the Dracula in this film, the only other time he portrayed Dracula would be in the Night Gallery series, in a small segment in there. So this is the only other 2 times he ever portrayed that Dracula, if I'm not mistaken.
Ah, wow, nice catch.
Yeah. So he only did it 2 times in his life, in this movie and in a 15-minute segment on Night Gallery, which was my staple as a child.
Well, now we come to the Hammer horror era of Dracula, and we're going to start with Dracula, also known in the States as Horror Dracula, from 1958.
This is the story of Dracula, a creature who destroys all whom he touches. Dracula the terrifying, the feared, who sleeps in the tombs of the dead by day and arises at night to inflict his terror upon the innocent and the unsuspecting.
Oh, you must help me. You must. You're my only hope. You must.
I'll help you. I promise.
Please try and understand. This is not Lucy, the sister you loved. It's only a shell, possessed and corrupted by the evil of Dracula.
How do you destroy a fiend who has so far proven himself indestructible? Those who come to end his reign of terror stay to become his victims.
Castle Dracula is somewhere here in Klausenberg. Will you tell me how I get there?
You ordered a meal, sir. As an innkeeper, it's my duty to serve you. When you've eaten, I ask you to go and leave us in peace.
This is the doctor who dares to challenge the vampire Dracula. This is the anguished man who fears for the lives of his beloved, the girl who is his sister, and the one that is his wife. Dracula, the bedeviled master of all that is evil.
Mark, I know you and I think
we covered this, didn't we?
Yeah, our first podcast together. Remember?
That's right. Wow. Yeah, we talked about Horror Dracula. A great film.
Oh man.
Curse of Frankenstein was the start of Hammer's Gothic stuff, and that really worked. And then they immediately followed it up with this, which, if anything, is even more exciting and dynamic. Just, everything absolutely came together for this. The music, the set design, the 2 main actors are just unbelievably good.
The perfect Van Helsing as well.
And blood, colourful bright red blood. This must have freaked them out.
Oh, I can only imagine. They had never seen Dracula like this.
Yeah, Dracula melts at the end, right? And no one's that I'm pretty sure must never have been seen. So Hammer really delivering on the goods here. Great film. And like I say, we already covered it at some length already.
Yeah, you can definitely go back and find that in the UNH archives, unhpodcast.com.
I just got to mention that Van Helsing rocks a fantastic coat and hat, but he's got a collared jacket that's just amazing.
I certainly agree with that. Rick, any thoughts on this one?
That one started my love of Hammer right there, seeing this film as a child. So, it had everything in there, the blood, the gore, of course, as preteen. I mean, heck, you see the sexuality that just pours out of this thing with everything going on. So yeah, that everything was like the perfect storm in this film where they blew it out of the park, and it just ignited and changed Dracula forever from that day forward in 1958. And they realized, hey, we got a Dracula here that could be sexy, sensual, and he could be one hell of a beast. So he's got a lot going for him, and it just changed it forever. So it took it out of the novel, which was hinted at, and it just threw it into a totally new and exciting direction. And Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, I mean, they had the dynamic going on that is unparalleled in films right now.
Yeah.
Also got to be said, this is where Van Helsing really becomes an important character again. He is in the book, definitely, but in cinema, not really. I think that performance really killed his character as something to consider. Yeah. Whereas Peter Cushing's Van Helsing is like a force of nature.
Yeah, basically, he could be compared to Doctor Who, where he's like, knowledge is power, and he has the knowledge, and he could just he knows what to do with it. Far as in the book, he just had he was more timid.
Peter Cushing's Van Helsing is way more physical, isn't he? Mm-hmm. Way more sort of athletic and so on. Sets it as a younger character.
He's jumping up on tables and flying all over the place.
What makes me laugh is, we could also mention Brides of Dracula, though. That's a bit of a mislead because Dracula's not in it, but Van Helsing is, and there are vampires. So it's not really a Dracula film other than the title. However, I do like the fact that Van Helsing rocks into a place with nothing, doesn't even take a cross. The vampires see him and they just run away because it's Van Helsing, right? He doesn't even need a cross anymore.
It's like, really I'm that awesome,
Hey,
he was,
Yeah.
It is a well-known fact, at least it's quoted as being a well-known fact, by doctors, by psychiatrists, by psychologists, by the experts, that we all love a good fright, whichever way you like to put it, a shock. The Curse of Frankenstein, of course, was the first film I ever did for Hammer, and it was the one that started the ball rolling, you might say. It was the beginning of what I always refer to as my graveyard period. One of the critics said I looked like a road accident, and as a matter of fact, that's not far from the truth. Now we're going to do the greatest classic of all, Dracula. And I suppose they thought that perhaps I was the right height, I had the right appearance, the right voice or something like that.
My revenge has spread over centuries and has just begun!
It just so happens that I was one of the very few people who had read the book many years ago, shivered and shuddered under the bedclothes and all that kind of thing, because in those days it was strictly forbidden for young people to read books of that sort. I realized from reading the book that the character was a very heroic character, to have this immense power over women and this immense physical strength, and a very romantic character, certainly irresistible to women, and also a very erotic figure. It's quite obvious, isn't it, the sexual significance of the bite and draining people's life. It did exist. His title was Vladimir, whatever you like to call it. He did things which are quite sickening. I'm not going to go into details. Now, I think a lot of people will know about them. It wasn't called the Impaler for nothing. Drac is devil, Ul is the, and A is son of in Romania. So Dracula can mean the son of the devil. I never set out to terrify people. It's terrorism without risk, as far as the audience is concerned.
Count Dracula!
I never set out to terrify people, to drive them out of their wits.
I summoned you!
It was my will. Of course not. It is a form of entertainment. We have a lot of laughs. I mean, I have a somewhat perverted sense of humor. I frequently used to let it out in rehearsals. Sometimes even in takes when I knew the scene was no good. Of course, sometimes with these wretched contact lenses in, I could hardly see at all. I'd miss the camera when I was trying to grab somebody. We had a lot of laughs. It was great fun. Fun, that's the operative word. You don't get much of that today.
See Christopher Lee as Count Dracula, next on TNT.
Nobody plays vampires like TNT.
I could talk about this one all day. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this was my first Dracula film as a kid, as I've mentioned, in that previous podcast. I have just a lot of love for that original Hammer horror Dracula. So the next one we have is Dracula, Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, which I think was made at least 5 years after the first one. So it took a while to get Chris Lee back, and he wasn't a fan. Didn't bring back Van Helsing. They had another quite good vampire hunter called Father Sandor, played by Andrew Keir, which I quite liked. He was a priest, but he was like very grounded in reality. That was interesting. Not a great film. It takes half the film for Dracula to even appear. So, not great.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen this one. If I have, it was sort of a dead brain cell.
If it helps, it's the one where Dracula's on ice at the end and they realise shooting the ice cracks the ice and he's going to fall. And, Dracula gets killed by water instead of staking. And it also appears to be in broad daylight in bits. I think it's not meant to be.
I don't think so.
It's a bit weird because it doesn't work with the first one. Yeah, the details of the sunlight in the first one. But,
every time I see the ice breaking scene, I just kind of scoff at that one. Like, oh, really? Come on. Dracula 1968. You said this is a TV movie from Tales of Mystery and Imagination?
Series where they covered classics, and they were like an hour and 15 minutes. And then Denham Elliott, who's Marcus from Raiders of the Lost Ark, Denham Elliott as Dracula, and he plays it a really interesting way. It's kind of half Lugosi, but half Nosferatu-y. His teeth are more like rat's teeth, for example, when he uses them. And at one point, near the end, and this spoiler at the end, he's kind of saying, don't hurt me, I'll give you power. He's like almost begging for his life, which isn't very Dracula-ish. Interesting turn. I'm not going to say more than that. It's an interesting turn. It's part of the box set. I've got the box set, and only half the series survives. And this particular one did survive. I liked it. It was interesting to see. But yeah. It's black and white as well.
Dracula has risen from the grave, and I believe we mentioned this earlier, right, Mark?
Yeah. This is the first Hammer Dracula I saw. I remember seeing. Man, there's a lot of blood in this film.
Yeah, there really is.
It's again, we know Van Helsing. We get these priests involved. I don't think this one's directed by Terence Fisher, but I could be wrong. We haven't mentioned direction. The direction of the other two, and loads of hammers. Terence Fisher, and he's fantastic. This one's a bit more sadistic, a bit more interesting, but there's some really nice elements in it. What about you, Rick? What do you think of it?
I like this one. Like you said, that the blood was they're trying to tone up the blood a little bit more. They're probably seeing how far they could go. They're trying to probably just go to the next level with this one, even though the story notch up the violence a little bit more. So yeah, they're trying to see how far they could push the envelope.
Yeah. There's two elements to this film I want to mention briefly, which is it becomes a thing that you have to have faith to kill the vampire in this one. They actually drive a stake into Dracula at one point, but they don't pray, and he just pulls it out again. Whereas it's about you have to believe. It's not just a case of doing this to kill the vampire, which is not ever. I don't think it ever surfaces again. But it's an interesting idea. And the other bit is it's a really cool bit at the end where Dracula's kind of impaled, and the priest has to pray. And the way it's shot and done is really nice. The sound goes, and you just hear the voice of the priest praying with a slight echo. While Dracula struck on this cross, and really nice ending, I'd say. Good film, effective ending.
The ending was very much like very epic. Yeah,
I feel that ending holds up even now.
I had a massive poster on my wall of the end of Dracula impaled on a cross. My mother didn't mind, but it was blood, and so I used to have that on my wall as a kid.
That's awesome. I bet that would be worth a fortune now, probably.
Yeah.
Taste the Blood of Dracula.
This is Dracula brought forward a bit. It's more Edwardian, and it's got this vibe of Ralph Bates is like this guy who dabbles in satanic rituals and stuff, and he persuades these Victorian thrill seekers to sort of buy this blood that was found by Roy Kinnear. This one's a direct sequel from Dracula Risen from the Grave. We see the end of Dracula Risen from the Grave right at the beginning of this, don't we?
Yeah.
This I think is really good. This is a really good one.
I agree.
Yeah, it was about the sins of the parents affecting the children, wasn't it? That's what it's all about.
Scars of Dracula is up next.
Oh, this is the worst. To me, this is the worst Hammer one because it's kind of sadistic and doesn't really go anywhere. Interestingly, it's got Patrick Troughton as a little minion, one of the Doctor Who's. Don't really like this one that much.
Count Dracula from 1970.
Christopher Lee's playing Dracula in this, but it's like a Jess Franco one, and it's got all the problems that Jess Franco has. It's boring and turgid and stuff like that. It has many elements that are similar to the book, though. He's old at the start and he gets younger, for example.
I do remember Lee having the mustache, if you will.
Yeah, and he has the mustache. But it's kind of dreary. It's a dreary film.
Dracula versus Frankenstein from 1971. And as I told you earlier, Mark, I love your note here. It just says terrible. And I would agree. I think
it's stunk on ice. It's stunk on ice.
Yeah.
I'm probably the minority here because I remember seeing this as a kid. I know this was one of those terrible films, but it's one of those ones that I loved, even though it was so bad.
So bad
because,
it's good, right?
Yeah, so bad it's good. It's like one of those campy ones. I mean, the plot lines everywhere. I mean, it starts one way, it goes another, and the Dracula with the perm hair and the porn stash and everything else. But I wanted that ring, that ring that he had.
I don't blame. Yeah, it's got a touch of Manos Hand of Fate about it, this Dracula. He's kind of, it does look like a pantomime Dracula or a dad who's dressed up for Halloween.
Yeah. This is terrible, but I love it.
Yeah, if you're looking for just something fun to kind of like, honestly, just to drink to, this would probably work, You can do worse for sure. Zoltan, Hound of Dracula. Oh man, I saw this when I was a kid.
So did I. And I watched it for a second time for this showing, just to kind of remind myself about it. It's got some big name actors in it, bizarrely, but it is a terrible film. Basically, the narrative, the dog's handler has to sort of exposition on everything to let you know what's going on. I like the ending where like little puppies are vampire dogs. That made me laugh.
Oh yeah.
Not great.
I had almost forgotten about that part, Mark. I need to go back and watch this one just for nostalgia's sake. Dracula AD 1972. Oh man, this was not my favorite Dracula. Mark, what do you think of this one?
I kind of like this one. I feel it was influenced by like Count Yorga, and it was like, and honestly, if it had been made slightly later, I would have thought a strong influence would probably be The Night Stalker. But The Night Stalker came after this. Trying to put Dracula in a modern setting. It's got its problems. The terrible. Dangerous use of these not middle-aged, but 30 plus years old actors doing stuff. Again, we use of an Alucard. Johnny Alucard is a character in this. Turns out he's a descendant of Dracula. And he gets killed once he's bitten by a vampire by falling into a shower and turning on the shower, so it's running water, right? But, however, this is the return of Van Helsing. But unbelievably, this is the first time we see Van Helsing since Brides of Dracula. So they did not use Van Helsing until this. Weird, right?
Crazy.
Is this the one with, I think, Carolyn Monroe? So
yeah, she gets covered in blood.
Hey, that's worth the whole film right there.
Yeah, you could definitely do worse, for sure.
But I've got her on my list of, 6 or 7 women I'd probably marry. She's one of them, yes.
The Satanic Rites of Dracula. This is one of my favorites.
This is nuts. He's got killer hippies working for him. He's like a Bond villain. He's trying to kill everyone in the world because he's fed up with living instead of just letting someone stick a stake for him. Again, it got us a great intro because we got a Van Helsing fighting Dracula as an intro, a prologue. Almost like a James Bond prologue sequence. We get a Van Helsing and Dracula fighting.
It really is kind of Dracula meets Bond.
Yeah, and it's got this mystery going on. What's going on? Who's this strange man that's leading this strange cult? And it's Dracula, right? Okay. Good one.
Elements.
Not bad.
I like it.
Lee's last turn as Dracula as well.
This one was basically the swan song of Christopher Lee. I think one of the last Hammer Hammer appearances, I believe. So he left it out of the park with this one. So yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I liked it.
It's just good fun. It's not taken extremely seriously, I don't think. I love the cult stuff with Dracula, too. I thought all that was done really well. So Blackula?
Blackula has the one plot element that hasn't been introduced yet, which is Blackula's trying to look for the reincarnation of his lost wife.
Yes.
Which becomes a Dracula trope shortly afterwards. That's why I really wanted to mention Blackula. Blackula can't live without his wife and sacrifices himself, which is kind of a real interesting turn.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that.
It definitely humanizes the Dracula character, having Dracula look for his wife. Even in the new Castlevania anime, Blood for Dracula. This is the Warhol Udo Kier. This is probably Becky's favorite Dracula, right?
She loves this. It's nuts. It's got the worst sexual politics you can imagine. It's Udo Kier. He's vomiting blood everywhere because he's after a virgin. He needs a virgin. And unfortunately, the gardener keeps de-virginizing the virgins. So, and in the end, it turns into let's chop off bits of Dracula and chase him round, which is amazing.
It makes me laugh every time.
The last 5 minutes make the film, really. Otherwise, it's kind of weirdly unpleasant.
There's a lot of porn in this one. Like it's kind of like Dracula.
It's not just that. I'm fine with that. It's the gardener's misogyny that's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, he's such an asshole.
Yeah,
I just gotta say it. Sorry if I offend anyone, but man, he is not likable.
You don't care. This was made for him. I mean, he was so androgynous in this film that it was just, no one else could have pulled this movie off. No one.
Yeah, I really like Udo Kier. I like Udo Kier anyway, but in this, he looks so pretty.
He is the pretty Dracula for sure.
Yeah,
and also his accent for Dracula is just, it's so funny. If you're looking for a funny Dracula film, this is it.
This is like the first emo-ish Dracula, right? So we're getting a bit of maybe an influence on Anne Rice's kind of creations.
Yeah,
I could see that.
There's a bit of that. See that. Anyway, yeah.
He's got the pretty hair, so. Oh man, we've covered this one too. Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. I like this. It's cheesy. You don't get Dracula in it for long, but it's.
Well, it is in there, but it's in it a bit. But we get Van Helsing, right? And he has these interesting ideas like, cross won't work in this around here because it's inappropriate, but other holy relics of this culture will work. Interesting idea. There's some good stuff. It's a fun film. This I love late stage Hammer. They're just trying all sorts of crazy stuff.
They really are. It's Hammer meets Shaw Brothers essentially.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it as a kid. Not too much memory of it, but I remember it was really out there. I mean, it was just one of those ones you just watch and it just seeped into you. I mean, the Van Helsing was a little bit more protuberant, I hate to say, but a little more, they more of a character in this one than the others. So this was pretty good.
We have Dracula. This is 1973 or 74. Jack Palance as Dracula. I don't think I've seen this one.
Yeah, this is again Dracula. This is the first time Dracula's recognized a reincarnation of his lost love. He's also presented as a war leader. He talks about it quite specifically. I think straight from the book as well. Dan Curtis production. He's really solid. Jack Palance is very animalistic in this, and scary.
And I tend to like Dan Curtis stuff, so I need to watch this one.
Oh yeah, it's worth a watch. Also, this version of Dracula was inspired the Marvel, had the look of the Marvel Draculas. Tomb of Dracula and Dracula Lives. They were basing it on Jack Palance's look in this film, so that's kind of interesting too. Interesting turn. He's the rest of the film's dull, but he's good.
He's very feral in this. He's almost like a cat. Like a savage cat. Yeah. He pulled this one off. Palance did good.
Very cool. Okay, I've got to.
And he apparently didn't want to do it again. I think they talked about a sequel. He said, "No, I'm not playing that again." He found it because of his method, and he found it really hard to sort of go into the mind of Dracula.
Huh, interesting. You go back to Lugosi, people have said he was on stage saying, like, "I am Dracula." And I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I've heard people say that before. So.
Well, he got buried in his cape, so
Yeah, so I mean, I think he kind of relished the role, but just it's interesting the differences. Mark, this is another one I really was trying to get to before the show, but just could not fit it in, and that's Count Dracula from the BBC production, 1977.
Yeah, possibly the most faithful version of it all. It's got good, these are British actors, good acting. It's a bit stagey because it's cheap, but it's still really well acted. Frank Finlay's a real standout as Van Helsing. He plays him as the character from the book, a Dutchman. And he's like, he's the wise old guy of the story. And there's some interesting stuff. The Renfield's good. You like this one, right, Rick?
Yeah, this is really good. This is this one I remember. I think we even talked about this one in school when I was a teenager, because this one was one of the most faithful adaptations ever, of that. And that's the way Jordan played him. He brought the sensuality right there to the small screen, in this production. Yeah. So yeah, he was a good role for this one.
He was a great Dracula. Yeah, really was.
As mentioned earlier, Dracula 79 with Frank Langella.
It's not scary at all.
It's not. And also, Harker kind of sucks in this one, in my opinion.
Yeah, the plot changes are weird. Like, Renfield's like a bit of a chancer character rather than a nutcase. Well, he becomes a nutcase, but and stuff like that. There's just some weird choices in this. Frank Langella. I wasn't a fan of this. It was okay.
No, not my favorite either.
I much prefer the kind of parody, the pastiche of it, which is Love at First Bite, which, sorry, I think I just interrupted you.
No, fine. That's exactly where I was going.
A much better film. Way better film. Way better Dracula as well, in my opinion. George Hammond was fantastic in this. Renfield in this is just amazing, and him and his lunch.
Nosferatu 1979. I really like the 79 version. I know some people don't care for it too much, but I don't know. They do an interesting job of almost making Dracula like a little effeminate in this version, even though he's monstrous. And then as the film goes on, he just sort of gains more and more power and just becomes more bold.
He's scary, right? I have problems with it because I think bits of it are quite pretentious. I like Werner Herzog as well. I really do. And I think the first section is by far the best. But when it starts getting to the town infected by rats, there's some really pretentious stuff going on that's a bit annoying. And there's some bits that feel ridiculous to an extent. I feel like they're almost like Monty Python versions of the story where they're sort of bickering. There's people bickering about it's weird, but there's definitely there's some really good looking scenes and there's some good scenes as well. But I like it. For me, sometimes when I watch it, it's a 10, and sometimes when I watch it, it's a 5. It depends how it catches me.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Monster Squad 1987. This is a favorite of mine, and I didn't see it until maybe I want to say 4 or 5 years ago.
I saw it quite a few years after it came out, and I really liked it. And I think it's good enough that you're not relying on nostalgia to like it. Whereas some films from the 80s, you like it because of nostalgia, right? But this Monster Squad just stands up. It really would work well to anyone who likes Stranger Things, say.
I agree.
Yeah, had a good feel and a great writing script for this one too. So the direction on how this went, it was they took all your childhood monsters from when I was a kid and just threw them up a little bit more where I'd want to be involved with them. So yeah, this was like a dream.
A decent Dracula as well.
Indeed.
Critics are saying dazzling, romantic, alluring, classic, unforgettable, lavish, astonishing.
I am Dracula.
Words can persuade you, but nothing can prepare you. Bram Stoker's Dracula, a Francis Ford Coppola film. Rated R, at theaters now.
You guys know how much I love this film. I talk about it pretty much every chance I get. Probably my favorite Dracula film here. I love the fact that they mix history and kind of the Stoker novel. So we've talked about this a good bit, Mark.
Having watched all the Dracula films, do you know which one I think might be better than this?
Which one?
None of them. I think this is the best Dracula film. I do. It's very melodramatic, but man, it works. It really works. It is It's not like realistic drama by any means or any of that, but Gary Oldman's Dracula is just superb. And I have no problems with any of this film, not even Keanu Reeves' accent. I don't mind. It's all good as far as I'm concerned. I really like it.
I like that you say that, because obviously you're the best judge, of, I guess, the British accent, because for me, I was like, God, it sounds so fake at the time. But if you...
It doesn't bother me.
If you give it the okay, I'll give it the okay, Mark.
I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying it doesn't bother me.
Okay, there you go. Rick, any memories or thoughts on Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Okay, once again, I'm in the minority here, but I don't think this one was great, but it's not my favorite because I don't like how they did the romanticism of, Dracula, and everything. And Keanu Reeves, come on, man. I can't. I cannot picture him as, Jonathan Harker, but the dynamic of everything, especially production and the cinematography of this film was above par fantastic, and the score. And Gary Oldman, of course, he could read a phone book and be fantastic.
Man, absolutely.
That's what it had going for it. But as far as the storyline, it was like, okay, if they left out the romanticism, I would have given it one of my top ones. But
the romantic stuff didn't work.
It should have been. It should have been Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, not Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's just me. I can see that. That's his vision of it. So, I respect it.
Also, really great Van Helsing. Fantastic Van Helsing. Also, one that's often forgotten. Sadie Frost is a brilliant Lucy. The whole Lucy stuff is so good. It's ridiculously good.
Oh, man. She's not bad looking.
Come to me, Arthur. Come to it. That's fantastic.
Like, yes, ma'am.
The costumes in this film was phenomenal. The costumes. It was just whoever...
Yeah.
The field of the of the era, they just blew that out of the park. So yeah.
Everything was filmed on a soundstage, even the stuff outside, and I think that goes a long way in sort of giving you this artificial enclosed feel. But I think that works to the film's benefit, actually.
It was like claustrophobic almost.
Yeah.
That werewolf scene is like,
man. Yeah. That's pretty hardcore, to say the least, right?
You got that right.
Dracula Rising.
I think this was a Corman production. 93, yeah. It starts off kind of intriguing in a sort of dreamlike state. It felt almost like David Lynch, but honestly, it got bad fast, and it was like, this is a terrible, terrible film, and got boring. Dracula's like this... a bit emo, and he's got this other... basically, he's a priest. It starts off before he became Dracula, and there's another priest, but they both become vampires, and the other one's the evil one, and he's the good one, and he's in love with all, and it just goes on. It's just bad. Let's not talk about it anymore, unless anyone wants to.
Okay.
Nah, that's enough of that. Dracula Dead and Loving It. Oh, man. This definitely spoofs on the Francis Ford Coppola film. Like, it spoofs it hard. Some of it works, some of it doesn't.
So the best scene by far is the staking. That really cracks me up, but the rest of it, it's all right. The stake, where he keeps hitting it, the blood, there's ridiculous amounts of blood. Van Helsing goes and hides and says, "Do it again."
You didn't really enjoy this one, Mark?
Yeah, it was all right. I like the Renfield guy though; he was good.
Yeah, it was basically like The Naked Gun meets Dracula. You expected, going in that not keep your expectations low and just go there for the popcorn and the giggles. That's about it.
Yeah, I would say accurate on all fronts there. Dracula from 2001. Is this the sci-fi Dracula movie? I'm trying to think.
No. This is basically it's a trilogy. There's Dracula 2001 had Gerard Butler as Dracula in the modern age, and then there was a Dracula 2 Ascension and Dracula 3 Legacy. They were a trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
Different versions. People played Dracula in different ones on the premise that he got killed and then revived, and he comes back like Doctor Who as a different person, kind of. Yeah, the first one was bad. The second one was way bad because it had Jason Scott Lee in it as like this nutty vampire killer guy. And then he teamed up with another guy, and then they went on. 3 is pretty much a continuation of 2. 2 was way better than it should, and it had any right to be. It's basically Dracula for MTV. was the first one. The second one had this pairing. It reminded me a bit of Supernatural, but it kind of went off the ball in the second half. And the third one was the third one was like that. The second one was pretty good. They were okay. But yeah, there's not much to say really. One thing they did do is add some more of the vampire mythos back, in terms of if your vampire comes across a pile of seeds, it's forced to count it before it can continue. It cannot stand the sound of church bells, which I've never seen in any other film. I know it's vampire lore though. And also it comes up with this great premise that Dracula is actually Judas Iscariot, which is why Silva kills him.
That did not work for me at all.
I thought it was an interesting idea.
Yeah, a lot of people, I don't know, it seems to either really work for people or it really doesn't for... I don't know. I guess it is an interesting take on it.
I haven't seen any of those, so
you're not missing a lot.
I'm not one to judge. Yeah.
It's the first time I think we get this idea that Dracula didn't start with Dracula. He's a much older being, and Dracula was just one of his many guises. So it's the first time that kind of comes up. And in this case, it's Judas, right? Oh, Rutger Hauer's Dracula in Dracula 3, by the way. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it does have some, I guess. I don't know. None of these really work for me. I'll just say that. Not my favorites. But, I've seen worse, put it that way. Dracula 3000. Oh, man, we've talked about this one before, haven't we?
Yeah, Dracula in space. It's goofy. It's fun. It's silly. Dracula's got a massive cape, collar on his cape that's kind of fun. It's essentially, much the same as Jason X, or when anyone gets into space, Leprechaun in space, is that kind of thing. If you don't mind that, it works. It's fine.
Yeah, I'd agree. Dracula 2006. This was a BBC TV movie. I've not seen it.
Yeah, anyone seen it? Have you seen it, Rick?
No, I haven't seen that one. I've heard good things, though.
It's bad. No, it's bad.
Really? Really?
Lord Arthur Homewood has got congenital syphilis, and he brings Dracula over because he's told by a satanic group that Dracula's blood could cure him. And it spirals off from there. So it's ridiculous. Unfortunately, the acting's good. The direction's good. The story is awful. Abysmal. It's a terrible version of the Dracula story. So avoid, really.
There you go. Dracula, Pages from a Virgin's Diary. I don't believe I've seen this one either.
Now, yeah, this is where I was getting super obscure, right? I mean, I thought the 2006 one was obscure. This is obscure. This is a silent ballet version of Dracula.
Oh, wow.
Interesting, striking. Hour and 15 minutes, fairly short. I had to buy this to get it. In fact, then I think I found it on YouTube, so I think it might be on YouTube. Interesting one. Dracula is Asian in this, and the whole premise is about foreign invasion. The thing starts with a map of Europe with blood seeping across it from east to west, implying incursion. Or immigration, and it's all about that. But it's a ballet. It's the best silent Dracula ballet I've ever seen. Let's put it that way. It's also the only. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. It's worth a look.
Okay. I will definitely.
It's on YouTube, I believe.
Yeah, if you can find it on YouTube, why not? Right. Here we go. Dracula 3D. Oh man, I remember being so excited when this was coming out, and good God, it's terrible. Mark, tell us about it.
Oh, it's just bad. It basically, I don't know, some people like this, but it felt like the Dracula was played by a guy who kind of felt like a very uncharismatic Liam Neeson. And there was a giant praying mantis at one point. He turned into a giant praying mantis and took off a bloke's head or something.
Like the worst.
It was just. This is Argento as well, and it was just bad. It was just bad. The story wasn't interesting. Some of the scenes individually were okay, but as a story, it just was bad. What do you think, Rick? Have you seen it?
I think I facepalmed myself so many times during this film that I probably busted a blood vessel. It was like, I said, "Yeah, are you kidding me?" I said, "Oh man, yeah." I was just really, Argento. Yeah. What were you smoking?
Yeah, I don't know.
And I think of all the ones we've talked about, this is the worst one. This is the worst one.
Yeah, this is the worst. I agree. Like, even his daughter's in it, right? And even she can't save it.
Yeah, and I've seen her act okay in other stuff, and she couldn't seem to act in this one, so I don't know what was going on. It was weird.
I don't know. It was just, the whole thing is so strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, avoid this at all costs. I watched this when I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, and I still love it. It's so cheesy. Dracula, Sovereign of the Damned, based on the comic book. It is also known as Tomb of Dracula, depending on what region.
Yeah, sorry, I sent you this list and I completely put this in the wrong time period. This was early 80s, actually.
Yeah, early 80s.
It's a nuts one. There's so much plot, it's ridiculous.
Oh, man, it's just like crammed in there.
Basically, Dracula's son comes back as a golden angel to fight Dracula, and Dracula finds it hard to fight him because it's his son. So Heaven's trying to kill Dracula by using his familial feelings against him or something. And there's a satanic group, and there's also vampire hunters that seem to do nothing. And it's all right.
The voice acting is terrible too.
Oh yeah, the voice acting.
It's like Robotech kind of voice acting.
Yeah, it's either extremely melodramatic or flat as a pancake, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I love it because it is the only Dracula that has Count Dracula eating a hamburger in a diner.
If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. Count Dracula, sovereign of all vampires, exhibiting an apparent hunger for ordinary mortal food.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got a lot of pluses. So we're getting to the end now. We're in this century now.
We are.
Oh, but actually, we have been in this century for a few, haven't we? So the next
Dracula
one,
3D, that was definitely.
Yeah. And Pages. Yeah. There's a few.
The less said about that, the better. Also, the less said about this one, the better. Blade Trinity.
I like this one. I hate to say it, but I like it. Again, this is Dracula as a millennium-old being, and Dracula was just one of his many guises. Interesting. But I really like the scene where he goes into like a goth shop, and it shows you all the different things that Dracula's used for, including
Count
a Dracula dildos and Count Chocula. And like Dracula taking all this in, it made me think of when you said, what do you think Stoker would think of, what's happened? It was like that with this. But yeah, I like this one. Most people don't. Fair enough.
The only scene I really kind of enjoyed was I don't even want to say I enjoyed it. Like the scene that was cool was when Blade is sort of chasing Dracula. But even then I was like, you're Dracula. Like, why are you running from Blade? I guess it was to kind of lure him into a trap. But, this is a film I was really excited about because I love Blade 1 and 2. And then this came out, and I was just like, oh, God, they killed the Blade franchise.
Yeah, same thing. It's like I saw this in the theater, and it was like forgettable. It was like, Yeah, they really... Yeah.
It's kind of the Alien 3 to Alien and Aliens, or the Terminator 3 to Terminator 1 and 2. It's kind of that level of drop. But I like it. I like it very enough. I don't like the fact that they kind of do montages of the lady picking her playlist on her iPod as a dramatic thing. It's like, what? Even when it came out, it was like, what?
Early 2000s for sure. Batman versus Dracula, if I was going to make a movie. But this is an animated movie. What did you think of this one, Mark?
Loved it. Thought it was good.
Yeah,
really good. Really solid. Not the best of the best Batman stories, but solid. Him fighting vampires, him out-thinking Dracula because he can't out-fight him. That's very Batman, right?
Absolutely, yeah. This is from the newer Batman, like not the animated series, but like early 2000s Batman. And I thought
I'm not sure which.
Well.
Yeah, it was good.
Van Helsing, this is, I guess, kind of a guilty pleasure. And I get what they were trying to do. The computer graphics don't hold up well, but I do like the Dracula in Van Helsing a lot.
I was going to say the Dracula is really good. Richard Roxburgh's a really good Dracula, and he's kind of channeling. Bizarrely, he always makes me think of Gary Oldman, but not Gary Oldman's Dracula. Gary Oldman's character in Leon, the Professional. He's got that vibe to him. He's a really good Dracula. Yes, he is and the brides are fantastic.
Yeah, they really are. I saw this one in the theater, in fact.
Yeah, I saw this in the theater too, and the brides made the film. I mean, it was good. It was campy. The storyline was, cheesy, but the brides made the film.
It was a breathless film, right? It was a breathless film. The plot came second to like, just get on with stuff, do stuff, now.
Yeah, jump around.
Than actually making sense.
But then I think they were trying in a weird way to kind of summon the universal horror movies of old in certain parts, but it like you said, they were just trying to cram so much in. It never quite worked, but I like certain parts of it.
Yeah, it felt like Captain Kronos was a bit of an influence to it myself as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I think Captain Kronos is far better though.
I'd love to see a Kronos remake. Yeah, for sure.
Oh man, it needs to happen. We got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Hotel Transylvania. I like Hotel Transylvania, but that's because I have a young niece and nephew, and I can watch it with them. And it's a very sanitized Adam Sandler version of Dracula that, like, Adam Sandler is the worst sounding Dracula ever. I'll say that. He tries so hard with the Romanian accent, or you know what? Maybe he doesn't try hard. I don't know. But what do you guys think?
I haven't seen this myself, so I haven't seen this one. Yeah,
it's okay. Yeah.
Dracula Untold, rated PG-13.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah. Ooh. Well, I don't mind it. It's a bit a bit Van Helsing in that it's rushing through stuff. It's trying to make him. It's a war hero film, but he has to be a vampire to save his country. He's the suffering martyr here, not the monster that we know. And it's okay. I really like the Charles Dance stuff, the Nosferatu Charles Dance stuff. But it's a fairly weak film. But I don't mind it.
Yeah, I remember not being thrilled at all when I saw it in theaters. But I'm like you. I did think the stuff with the Nosferatu was really well done. I was like, man, if they had more of that in the film, I would have loved Dracula Untold. Rick, any thoughts on this one? Have you seen it?
I've seen bits and pieces of it, but that didn't hold my interest too much. I mean, it seems cinematography was pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a good looking film, and they were trying to kind of reboot the Universal monsters with this, and it, I mean, at this point, you can say that's a failure, I guess. They did come out with The Mummy, which I have not watched. I don't know if that fared any better, but yeah.
It was, first half was okay, second half it fell to pieces.
So a few TV shows here that have featured Dracula. Penny Dreadful. I will say I did not care for the Dracula in Penny Dreadful, even though I love the Penny Dreadful show.
He was a bit of a cipher, though he kind of started to come to the fore towards the end of season 3, but, season 3 ended abruptly, unresolved, so there was that. But I did like the show. I think it's a great show. Certainly season 1 and 2 are fantastic.
Oh, man, no doubt.
But like you say, the Dracula's not well served.
Dracula 2013, this has been on my list forever. I have not seen it. Mark,
now I only watched the first episode just for this podcast, really. It was okay.
Yeah.
It was 6 out of 10 kind of drama. Dracula's a sympathetic character trying to fight against some evil satanic group that were responsible for wronging him in some way that I can't even remember. It was okay. Penny Dreadful's significantly better.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know it only lasted one season, and so kind of when it ended, I was like, yeah, I'll see this eventually, but I have not got to it, so. The Munsters, Grandpa Munster. I mean, who doesn't love Grandpa Munster, right?
Yeah, he's Dracula, right? He's Dracula. I had to mention that in my list. It's like, I'm sure there's loads of others that I've forgotten, but Grandpa Munster, Dracula.
Yeah, absolutely.
Al Lewis is amazingly good. His interactions with Herman are just amazing.
Last but not least for TV vampires, The Count from Sesame Street. 1, 2,
there you go.
3.
There you go. That shows you the lasting power of Bela Lugosi's imagery.
Oh,
Nothing
man.
else. That's right.
Absolutely. It really does. Hey, who hasn't seen Sesame Street?
A good introduction for children right there.
Yeah, Dracula taught me to count.
There you go.
Oh, man. All right, so moving on. Comics and books. As you say here, Mark, there's really too many to mention. But kind of the main ones are, Dracula, the novel itself, Dracula's guest.
It's a short story where a visitor going towards Dracula. It could have been integrated into the novel as Jonathan Harker, but this one has an English visitor going towards Dracula's castle, but he gets lost, and some weird stuff happens, and a wolf kind of is not attacks him, but kind of rests on him and nibbles at his neck, and then runs off.
That's
and
right.
Dracula has sent a note to these soldiers to say, "Go find my guest. It's very important to me." And it's a very eerie, interesting one. It's not epistolary. It's maybe it is actually. Thinking about
it's not. It's written like a short story.
Yeah, it's written like a short story. And it's okay. Yeah, it's pretty decent.
Is there an audio version of Dracula that you prefer? Like if you were just going to sit down rather than read the novel. You just wanted to listen to it.
There's a really good version on Audible with Alan Cumming doing a lot of the Seward stuff. Tim Curry's in there as Van Helsing. Not much. There's a little Van Helsing, but not much. And various other actors. I really like that version. It's about 14, 15 hours. And it's a great version. I've listened to various versions, and that one is by far my favourite.
I've heard there's one with Tony Todd playing Dracula. That I would like to hear.
Yeah.
Tony Todd.
That's a short story.
It's a short story. It's a short story. And
adapted by Anthony D.P. Mann, again,
Indeed.
the host of Horror Etc. Good one. Tony Todd is a great Dracula.
Yeah, his voice.
Sounds really good.
I've heard snippets of his voice, and I was thinking, oh, crap, that's it right there. So, yeah. He has the voice, so, yeah.
I agree with that one. Also, there's a version that Christopher Lee reads that's quite good. It's short. It's not like the whole novel, just parts of it, but really worth seeking out. I believe that one is on YouTube. So we also have Marvel, Tomb of Dracula and Dracula Lives. Oh man, these are awesome. At some point, I feel like we need to just have like an episode discussing Tomb of Dracula and Dracula Lives.
Oh, that's an episode right there.
Yeah.
I mean, the artwork with everything.
We'll have to get you back for that one for sure, Rick. That'll be fun.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you. Mark, anything you want to say about these two?
Yeah, I did start reading them again. I found them very wordy. Some of the early 70s Marvel I find a bit wordy. I found it quite wordy, and I found it hard to get into, but it may be just I had so much other Dracula stuff going on. It was like, I don't think I got time to read through all of these. I was intending to, but I gave up after a few. And I was a bit worried that I might tarnish my cherished memories of reading these as a kid, because I really liked them. But I had a bit of trouble getting back into them, actually. Mm-hmm. So, I think that might be just me, though.
I think they do start off a little slow, but, once you get going, it's pretty easy to get back in.
I remember really digging them as a kid, though.
Anno Dracula by Kim Newman, which I actually have this purchased on Audible, I believe, and just have not gotten to it.
Yeah, it's very solid. It's in the same space as League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or Penny Dreadful. It's like an alternate history where Dracula lives, or he survives, or transcends his killing, and comes to England, and essentially becomes married to Queen Victoria and makes her young again, and so he is like head of the British Empire. And he's also created this whole set of sub-vampires. So vampires and humans coexist in Victorian Britain, is basically it. But the vampires are it's almost like a class thing. The vampires are held in higher esteem than everyone else. But they've all got to kind of work together.
I've always known that's how it really was.
Yeah, that's my world right there.
Another reason I want to go to England.
Yeah, so not bad. And there are several books now, I think, and comics, but I read the first one. Dracula doesn't become a real character. I mean, other than being discussed, he's always mentioned. He only really appears right at the end as a character, taking part in the action.
Good stuff. Yeah, I did read a little bit of the comic, like just to kind of see what it looked like, and I mean, the art really gorgeous in that, so you really can't go wrong whether you read the book or the comic, right?
No.
Well, any other Dracula titles, books that you gentlemen would like to mention before we close out here?
I mean, there are some more films, but honestly, I think I was fairly exhausted. There's some that are just too embarrassing. There's porno ones, and there's one called Vampiro where now David Niven's Dracula, but he basically did black faces at the end because he drinks someone's blood who's black. It's like, this is too embarrassing to
talk about.
But yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing. I mean, you guys had a good list, and the research you guys did for this was phenomenal. So, kudos to both of you guys. So, Mark and Lucard. So, fantastic show.
Thank you so much, Rick. We really appreciate you coming on. And where can people find your books?
Usually on Amazon, or I'm on Goodreads, and mostly I haunt Facebook. So any messages or any emails, just send it to me there. And I have an Instagram and on Twitter. So yeah, I'm all over social media. So I'm easy to find.
Yeah, you're active on the United Nations of Horror Facebook group, aren't you? That's one place, if nowhere else, that people can find you.
Yeah, a lot of respect for you guys there. So,
oh man,
especially Rebecca. Especially Rebecca. Miss you, Rebecca.
No one does research like Becky. I will say that. Like, again, shout out to Becky. Mark, I think you and I we do our best, but you know, Becky is the true intellectual, I guess.
Workhorse, unbelievable work ethic.
I know. Definitely far more than I will ever have.
I think she's a vampire. I think she's a vampire because I don't think she ever sleeps.
I don't think so either, man. Crazy stuff, crazy schedule. So shout out to Becky, and thanks to both of you guys for joining me this evening. It's been a very special edition of United Nations of Horror. And we will see you guys next time right here on the United Nations of Horror. Thanks for listening to the United Nations of Horror. Visit us online at www.unhpodcast.com. Come join us on Facebook to chat about all things horror. Just look up United Nations of Horror and you'll find our group. You can also find us on Twitter at UNHPodcast. And be sure to look for our old episodes on YouTube with added video and some special treats. As always, I want to thank everyone for your continued support. Until next time, I've been Lucard Dragomir, wishing you sweet nightmares.